Independent from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. He's with us from Washington. He serves on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee as well as the Environment and Public Works Committee. Obviously, Senator, because we'll talk about the economy in a minute. But because of your committee assignments, let's talk about BP. What's going on down there, and are you disappointed with the government's response?
Well, I'm disappointed with what government has been doing for many years. You know, if you tell the American people that you got to get government off the backs of business, you end up with the Wall Street disaster because you deregulate what goes on Wall Street, and you end up with a situation, the tragedy that we're seeing in the Gulf Coast right now. The bottom line is that when you're dealing with a risky endeavor like deep sea drilling, what you have got to do is regulate that thoroughly, and you can't let companies like BP that made $5 billion in profits in the first quarter of this year essentially make risky efforts and not do the safety precautions that they should be doing.
Sam Stein,
so that is the concern.
Sam Stein of the Huffington Post reported earlier that the Senate can't even pass a bill that would raise the liability limits for BP. Who's stalling that?
Well, who do you think is stalling that? The people who represent today and have represented for years the interest of the oil industry. My view is that BP has got to pay every nickel of economic damage as well as the cleanup. And we're going to fight to make sure that that happens. But in addition to that, what we have got to do, if there's any silver lining in this horrendous disaster, it's got to be a wake-up call that we have to transform our energy system. We're going to be introducing legislation to impose a permanent ban on offshore drilling on the West Coast, the East Coast, and sections of Florida. And the reason for that is that the evidence is overwhelming, is that if you want to save consumers money, the way you do that is through energy conservation. You get good mileage per gallon on our automobiles, and you don't have to drill, baby drill. That's where the savings are.
Let me go to Sam Stein with a question for you, Sam, with the Huffington Post, and then Sam, feel free to ask Senator Sanders a question.
Sure.
Who are the specific senators that are standing in the way of increasing BP's liability?
Well, it came up for unanimous consent on 3 occasions. Once it was Senator Lisa Murkowski. The other time I believe it was James Inhofe, although it might have been Tom Coburn. I can't recall which one. Each case it was in respect to the idea that it would be economically prohibitive to have unlimited or $10 billion liability cap. It would be prohibitive for smaller companies who want to drill in the Gulf from then drilling. Of course, the logic is that if you can't pay for the economic damages you produce, then you shouldn't really be drilling to begin with.
You shouldn't be drilling anyway. Do you have a question for the senator?
Yeah, I actually do. Senator Sanders, quick question. 2, actually. One is, any reaction to the president's soon-to-be announcement that he wants a temporary ban on the permits for offshore drilling? And secondly, a lot of talk on the Senate about comprehensive energy reform being effectively dead because there aren't enough Democratic senators now to pass a bill that contains components that increase offshore drilling. Is that true?
Well, let me take number one. I think a moratorium is obviously a sensible idea. How do you continue deep offshore drilling if we don't know the causes of this terrible disaster? I would go further. I think you need a permanent ban on the West Coast, the East Coast, and parts of Florida. Second of all, I'm sorry, your second question was?
Is comprehensive energy reform effectively dead if it contains offshore drilling components?
Well, it's not only that. Look, in my view, climate change is a terribly serious problem. I think that by moving away from fossil fuel and into energy efficiency and sustainable energy, we can create millions of jobs, become energy independent, and save taxpayers and consumers money. The problem is it's not only offshore drilling. It is putting huge amounts of money into nuclear energy. It's putting huge amounts of money into coal. The fact of the matter, so to answer your question, do I think we have 60 votes at this point to stand up to the fossil fuel energy and the big money interest to do something really serious? I don't think so, but it goes beyond offshore drilling. That's part of the problem.
All right, Senator Sanders, thank you so much for being on the show this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator.